to the Soul Mirror. I'm your host, Shreya. Tonight on the Soul Mirror, we explore the unseen blueprint of our lives, our energy anatomy. Our guest, Daphne Michaels, a human potential expert, best selling author, and ultra consciousness guide. With roots in psychology, decades as a psychotherapist, and a profound spiritual journey, Daphne helps people rise beyond limits and access their highest truth. Her work bridges science, spirit, and leadership with practical tools that awaken the power within. So, welcome, Daphne. I'm honored to have you on my show.
Thank you, Shreya. I'm very honored to be here as well.
Thank you, Daphne. And you describe energy anatomy as a key to unlocking human potential. Why exactly is it, and why should people pay attention to it?
Our energetic anatomy is actually our spirit. It is actually our psyche. And so if we're looking at our human potential, that's where we're going to find it. We're not going to find our complete potential just in our mind. We're going to find it in our spirit, in the deepest layers of our psyche.
Yes, I love how you describe it. And how does it show up in daily life even when we are not conscious of it?
It shows up as our mood. It shows up as our optimism. It shows up in our interactions with others in
Mm.
terms of really feeling like we're connecting with people. It shows up in our creativity. These are just the ways that our spirit and the deepest layers of our psyche can show up in our life.
Yes, and I think that makes energy anatomy sound less abstract and more like a living map we all carry. And
Exactly. It's actually not abstract. It's actually when we begin to understand our energetic anatomy, the energy of our spirit, the energy of our creativity, the energy of our moods, the energy of our vibration and frequency, it is actually much more visible than we could ever imagine.
yes, that's so true. And also, you have guided people through ultra consciousness practice. What shifts when someone begins to live from that elevated state?
Think I have seen over and over again that person's entire life shifts because when we're living with this awareness of our energetic anatomy, our energetic impact on others, and that we have choices to elevate ourselves. Everything in our life elevates at the same time.
That's such a freeing perspective that transformation doesn't have to mean staying in a perfect state, but learning how to return to it more often.
Exactly. That is so true. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that because ultra consciousness is not a destination. It is an awareness of the edges of our human potential and that we can set our own trajectory to move toward that potential of living it on a higher bandwidth, living in an elevated state, bringing our creativity through. We can set our trajectory to move in that direction more often.
Yes. And is it something we sustain long term or do we move in and out of it?
If we are committed to learning how to live on a higher bandwidth, if we are committed to developing our energetic anatomy, it can be a very long-term journey. In fact, a forever journey. However, on this journey, it's like riding a wave. We're going to have highs, we're going to have lows, and that's
Mm.
life. But overall, we will see how our life is changing for the positive because we've made a commitment to ourselves to live on a higher bandwidth.
It's so encouraging to know that transforming can be fluid rather than all nor nothing. Your background in behavioral science and psychotherapy meets spirituality in your work. How do those worlds support rather than contradict each other?
The journey of spirituality is to get beyond the ego. So psychotherapy is also about helping people understand how their egos are impacting their lives. So when I say ego, I'm talking about our defense structure. I'm talking about the ways that we sabotage ourselves, the ways that we have unhealed pain inside us that keeps us moving in these negative spirals, the way that we are not really taking responsibility for our lives, the way that we're acting in ways that we don't want to act, that is not about our higher self or our best self. This is all the realm of psychotherapy. The difference is that when we move into spiritual development, we are beyond just looking at what we don't want, and we've moved into creating what we do want.
Yes, I think many listeners will find relief in that because we are often told that we have to choose between science and soul when really they strengthen each other. And do you
They
find lead? Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to agree with you. They are absolutely the same thing at different
Mm,
edges of the same continuum. Science on one side, spirituality on the other side, and energetic awareness is right in the center of those two extremes.
yes, so true. And do you find leaders are more open now to blending inner development with performance?
Yes, leaders are understanding that they have to take care of their own energetic anatomy. The world has gotten very complex and oftentimes very negative, and morale is sometimes really difficult. So, for leaders, they understand that they themselves need to figure out how not to get sucked into that, not to get sucked into the realm of the ego where everybody's egos are fired up and they're not functioning at a higher level. So the leader themselves has to figure out how to solve that puzzle in their own energetic anatomy so that they can stay on a higher bandwidth and bring through the best in others.
That's so exciting. And I think personal evolution is no longer separate from professional success.
And that is a huge point that you're making here because for so many years they were completely separate. And so, you know, all of these concepts are finding their way into mainstream because people are ready to say, I can no longer survive in the world unless I have a really good connection to myself
Mm,
and I have a really map that is going to allow me to navigate layers of potential that are not visible directly in the world at this
mhm.
point. They're visible in potential. And I have to be the one as the leader to say, here's the potential. And the only way to get to this potential is to get to a higher vibration, a higher frequency. And that's once again where we have to learn about our own energetic anatomy so that we can do that.
Yes. And also you have written about getting past life like past self-imposed limits. What is one energetic block that keeps people most stuck?
There are a few big energetic blocks. One is not understanding that personal potential is the highest potential. So a lot of times people look at the world and they say, I can't succeed in this world. This world requires this level of status, this level of money, this level of education, this level of networking. And those are all part of the old paradigm. And
Mm.
what really matters now is that every single person develops themselves and understands that their personal potential is going to take them further than any of these external status markers that we've been used to measuring ourselves against. Our own personal potential can open doors that we never thought that we could open. And so that's one of the big blocks. The other big block is commitment.
Mm.
So I think people can hop onto the wave and they're exhilarated and they feel so amazing because they are past their limits in that moment. But the universe has a way of testing us. So when we're tested, it's going to take everything we have to stay the course because we're up against some very powerful forces inside ourselves. The ego is a very powerful force that is going to hold us back. So we have to have that commitment to say, no matter what, I'm going to figure out my way beyond this particular challenge, whatever has shown up, and I'm going to keep going. So I think those are really the two biggest blocks that I see people having to work with.
Yes, and I think that's so powerful. And also, it reminds us that the biggest barriers are not always external, but the patterns we carry inside.
Exactly. In fact, the biggest battles are the ones that we carry inside.
Mhm.
When we think the battle is external to us, that's actually not the truth.
Mm.
There may be circumstances that we have to figure out, but the battle is always between our higher self and our ego. That's where the battle is.
Yes, I love it. And what is a simple practice to begin dissolving that block today?
Oh, that's a really good question. So the practices that will dissolve the blocks are to get in touch with the truth. And sometimes people can go into the deepest layers of their heart and they can find the deeper truth. And the deepest truth is I am worthy, I am capable, and I am meant to develop my highest potential. I am meant to transcend my limits. This is my birthright. Getting in touch with that truth and maybe writing it out every single day. This is my birthright. My life, my best life is my birthright. That's a really powerful thing to do. And then the other thing is to go above the body. And this might sound kind of strange, but it's very connected to meditation. So there's a way that we can just lift ourselves out slightly, not completely, but just a little bit to get into a vibration that is above the ego. Sometimes people can do this by looking at nature and all of a sudden they've transcended their ego. They're in a different state of consciousness. Sometimes people do this through meditation. They can transcend their ego in that moment and get into a higher state of consciousness. Sometimes it's taking a walk in the morning and getting beyond the ego, getting unstuck from the ego. Anything that can take us up and out of our ego is going to reconnect us with the greater truth of who we are and the pathways that we need to follow to embody and manifest from who we are.
I think that's really comforting. And if someone feels out of sync with themselves, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, How can understanding their energy anatomy help them realign?
I think it depends on how out of sync they are. If somebody has really, gotten buried in depression or anxiety or things that are very serious,
Hmm.
they've got a ways to go before they can reconnect with themselves. Although I will say that some people have awakenings. And when people have an awakening, it's actually an instantaneous wake up out of those states of being buried under really serious forces like depression and anxiety and things like that. So sometimes people need to heal first. And whatever that healing is, it can be through working with a professional, a psychotherapist or somebody in the medical field, if that is needed. So that's super important to understand that sometimes we have to heal before we elevate. And it just depends on what stage of your life you're in and what stage of your process you're in. But once you start getting reconnected with yourself, then there's a lot of work to do. And the work is generally about looking at our lives and asking really difficult questions about what in my life needs to change and how do I need to change my life. And I always say, don't make any quick decisions. This is not
Mhm.
about trying to make quick decisions and destroy the life that you have. That is never a good choice. But it is looking at your life from this witness perspective, from a higher perspective, and asking, okay, so what's working? What's not working? What is, what feels like me? What doesn't feel like me? And then lots and lots and lots of time developing what feels like us, both internally and then in our lives.
That's really interesting. And I think it takes the pressure off of arriving and instead makes alignment a practice that we can return to daily. And
Absolutely.
do you believe full alignment is ever permanent or is it more about continuous tuning?
Both. It's really, really interesting because the alignment is literally our torso. It is literally our core. When we are aligned with ourselves, when our heart is open, when we have a sense of security in our body, when we feel empowered, when we're in touch with our creativity, when we have clarity in our lives, these are all energetic dynamics that take place in our core and shifting and opening on an energetic level to bring us into coherence with ourselves. So on a day-to-day basis, we can get knocked out of that alignment. However, there's a witness that develops in us. And that witness can tell us you're still aligned. You're just not in that organization at the moment. You got knocked over to your ego because your ego is going to kick in if you feel threatened, if you feel like the challenges of your life exceed your ability to remain centered. You're going to get knocked over to your ego, but your witness is watching you. And the witness is able to say, go out for a walk, talk to a friend, get recentered, get realigned, because the anatomy itself develops and that holds even if we are knocked out of that anatomy, like getting like falling down physically. We don't lose our body, right? Our
Hmm.
body is still there. We're just not functioning at the level that we want to. Same thing happens energetically. The energetic anatomy has still been developed. And when we get knocked off the wave, it's just like falling down in life. We get ourselves back up, we brush ourselves off, we recenter ourselves, and we move forward.
Yes, I think that reframes wholeness as a practice and not as a destination. And this is a wonderful conversation with you. And thank you for sharing your wisdom and presence with us tonight. And I think I'm really grateful for how you bridge science and spirit and for showing us practical ways to rise beyond our limits. And if after this my listeners want to connect with you, then what's the best way?
Go to daphnemichaels.com and you'll see different things that are available on my website. I would love to connect with you. It would be great to have your listeners connect. I always like to. One of the things I really like is this connection between location. I'm here in the US in the Seattle area, you're in India, and there's some kind of energetic connection that I think is just beautiful.
And I will definitely make sure to attach all these details and links below so that the listeners can find them easily and get in touch with you. Daphne reminds us that our energy is not mysterious fluff. It's the architecture of our lives, influencing how we think, feel, and lead. Her insights invite us to stop living from fragments and begin aligning with our whole energetic design. If this conversation sparked curiosity, explore her book, The Gifted, and her teaching on energy anatomy. Remember, the power to rise beyond your limits is always within you. It's simply waiting to be awakened. Thank you.